Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, and today I'm hanging out with Rick Heinz, author and Geek and Sundry writer. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing very, very well in my office in Chicago, and we're actually live on YouTube. Crap.
Yeah, woohoo! Hopefully, you won't have any red monster moments.
Well, we'll see what we can do, right?
Yeah,
So, how are you? Thanks for having me, by the way.
you're welcome. I'm doing good, man. It's just two dudes talking about gaming and stuff. So
You mean like what we've been doing for the past 30 minutes already?
essentially, yeah, that's all. That's all I do. People want to know. So, what do I need to know? What are we gonna do? I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like if you get a couple of gamers together and they start talking, before you know it, an hour has gone by. I have to watch and make sure not it isn't more than one.
Yeah, two GMs talking about all the games that we've run and all the problems that we've ever seen, or our favorite moments that can go on for quite a while, I bet. So,
Yeah. So
uh,
I had encountered you from an article you did for GM Tips, and you had mentioned, you'd mentioned us, and I was like, oh, cool. I want to talk to this guy. He's spreading the Nerdarchy love, which we greatly
oh
appreciate.
yeah, no, I had, like I said earlier, I had been following you guys on YouTube for the longest time, particularly because you guys have like this incredible in-depth knowledge. Like, I had been I was looking about whether or not I wanted to dive into fifth edition D&D, right? And you guys were talking about like, how to like break character classes or like these things that you had seen as a problem in one of your YouTube videos. And the way that you guys talked about like your campaigns, the way that you guys described everything, it was awesome. So I started following you guys back then, and then when GM Tips had started, and I was working with Satine to start writing sort of additional content based off the GM Tips show. Um, and I heard that you guys had gotten brought on about a week and a half before me or so, or a week before me. And I was like, this is awesome. I was kind of hoping I was going to see you guys at the studio. But like our schedules were off by just like that much. So I've been a big fan for a while. So
Uh, you would have been one of the many faces in the blur. It was such a strange experience for us in a good way, because like we get together and it's like either it's like this, or it's like we have a camera, like you can reach out and touch it, and it's just one camera and it's just us sitting in Ted's basement pretty much.
being in that dark production studio at the Geek and Sundry headquarters, though, is it's really cool though, and it's pretty crazy to see it in person.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is a bit daunting and intimidating at first too. I was like, don't vomit on Satine. Don't vomit on Satine.
Yeah, well, she's because she's there. She's super friendly, and she's like, okay, we're gonna have to be like close together because of like the camera and stuff like that, and the dice, and don't worry about the takes or anything. You get all mic'd up and hang back and sit there, and then the moment that camera starts rolling, everybody gets real quiet. You're just like, what am I supposed to do? you know.
Yeah. Well,
So,
she does a great job at moderating and getting the conversation
oh yeah.
going, and
Um,
welcoming to the guests.
Yep. So we were talking earlier because your GM Tips, your whole campaign that you guys have been running. How did you guys feel about going on the show and what you guys did?
We were super psyched. We kind of went in without a whole lot of expectations, and we just figured, we were going to do the thing and hang out, and because the team like focuses on topics that are like the bread and butter of that particular guest, it just makes it so much easier anyway.
Yep.
And they done, and I guess it's weird because like for her, she's always done homebrew up until starting Maze Arcana, and then once they did start at Maze Arcana, now you know it's all Eberron, and now she's doing Forgotten Realms and playing in other people's
Sure.
sandboxes. So for us to talk about homebrew and kind of improv and DMing on the fly, that part was pretty easy. I guess the hardest part was like you kind of get briefed beforehand. So we were
Mhm.
like under this impression that we had these time constraints. So we know how we can be when we talk. So we were trying to police ourselves. And then when we're done, she's like, "Why didn't you guys talk more?" I was like, "Because I thought we had to keep it to like a certain amount of time."
Oh yeah, no, when I was there, they were like, okay, Rick, you're only allowed to talk about this much for these periods of times, and because yours was homebrew and mine was multiple story tracks, right? Like improv, homebrew games that you guys did, and uh, it's really good advice just on a general basis for anybody who hasn't seen it, who's watching this. I mean, your whole pitch is the idea that like, hey, you guys can pick up a game with a few people, start running, everything is homebrew. You don't need a preset world setting, and do your thing. I tried to expand on it with like run a heist game or do these other things with it, but I've been running homebrew for I want to say like 7 years now. um, stopping because I mean, I used to grew up in White Wolf and other Onyx Path and other settings, and then I kind of gravitated towards my own creation with my friends. But do you find that at conventions, when you guys are going to places or running games out there, do you play with people that already know the game system they want to play and the setting they want to play, or are you finding that plenty of people are okay with just sitting down being like, we're in the White House. There's 4 Secret Service agents, and there's zombies. Like, go.
I think it'd be more the former than the latter, because well, people come and they have like their preconceived notions of things. So that's what they come for. Like, and we have
Sure.
not run actually a ton of games at conventions, so that's something we're probably going to start doing a bit more. I know we have Concoction in Cleveland coming up, so we're going to each be running a game there and doing some panels. But then now I feel like too, like if people encounter us and they know who we are, then they want to play Dungeons and Dragons anyway. So chances
The
of that,
official the official Nerdarchy dungeon crawl, right?
yeah, very much so. So we had mentioned when we first got started, and guys, as always, the links are in the description, that you're also a novelist and you just recently put out your first novel. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. Shameless self-promotion. I have written the book, The Seventh Age Dawn. It's actually how I got started working for the Nerdist and Geek and Sundry in that end. They had a contest for like top sci-fi fantasy novels, and I entered and I won. And the book is based off the premise that you are in modern day Chicago, and the Illuminati, the Masons, or all these other secret societies, they've had magic forever. And what happens when a group of anarchists level the playing field and give that magic to everybody in today's world? So it's a sarcastic post-apocalyptic tale of magic returning to today's world. And I'm not going to lie, I totally have the entire ideas based off games that I ran, and stories that we told as friends when we were gaming for years. Because I mean, like, yeah, I'm sure that you guys do it too. You play a chronicle or an epic game, even if it's a short-lived one, and afterwards you're out at the bar, you're drinking, and you're like, remember the time my character did this thing in that one game that was so awesome? Or there was just a campaign idea that really hit with all your friends. And over the years, I had been taking these short stories, because what I would do is I would run a game, and it would be like a 10-week game. Like, we sit on down and we're like, all right, guys, we're going to play this game. It's in the Seventh Age world. It's about something that's happening in LA. And here's this short murder mystery story about an event here. Or here's this event in, Chicago, or event in New Orleans. And over the years, I had kind of stitched this storyline together. And I think at like one point, I started doing NaNoWriMo, right? This National Novel Writing Month. And I sat down to start writing, put in some headphones, and I didn't stop. I found it was awesome. And I had at that point, like, I got some flack from my players because I totally ripped out like 90% of the campaign stuff and like most of the actual events. And I'm like, yeah, guys, I'm just keeping the characters and like some core ideas. Because I mean, campaigns don't make good novels sometimes. But
Most of the time. time and time again, we kind of rip on GMs that are so like infatuated with their own campaigns and their stories. I mean, we have a little bit of disdain for that because it takes away from the fun at the table, is our
Oh
opinion
yeah.
sometimes. So, and that's always what we say. This isn't going to be a novel. No one's going to even know what happened. So, and you actually took it and made it into a novel and took those parts out anyway. So what's the difference?
Yeah, like all the like all the awesome like player moments at the table, those are just player moments. You have to let the players drive the campaign, right? But what makes a good story out of them are the characters themselves. Like, because the players come up with these amazing characters like that will have good jokes, personalities, what they do, how they act. That's what's important for like a novel. For a campaign that you run at the table as a GM, and let your players cut loose. Like if they want to be villains and run a corporation, or if next thing you know, they're not going to get your MacGuffin to go into the cave to stop the dragon or whatever. Let them go do whatever they want. I mean, I'm kind of on that point of sandbox GMing, where I don't have a set plot tree that players will go from this point to this point to this point to this point, and that is the only path they go on. I'm very big on like, hey, here's this sandbox in the world. Here are a bunch of things that are happening in the world, and you guys are free to interact or go. And what do you do?
Yeah, like, and we kind of take it even a step further as far as like, oh, Steve can't show up this week, or oh, someone's character died, so now they're coming in new, and the idea that the player has to sit there and watch the other players play because there's not a good story moment, or because, or we're not going to game this week because one player isn't there and it's going to mess up the story. So some, as adults, we just came to the conclusion that, what, our time is precious. What we have, let's make the most of it and just play the game. A perfect example is one of the games I stream. I had one of the characters couldn't be there, and I actually came up with an excuse why they weren't going to be there, and it was going to come up a little bit into the session. But they started at action, and no one cared, literally. Like, and I never even got back to, oh well, this thing happened, because like they just went with the story was there and what was going on, and no one cared that the continuality of the story was broken because this one character that was there wasn't there now. They just want to play.
So it's so funny on the realistic prospect of a bunch of adults getting together to coordinate their schedules to show up on a weeknight for about 4 to 5 hours of gaming is like the most universally joked about topic I found. I messed up once years ago, and I had wrote and run this Eclipse phase game, right? Like this like transhumanist space game, like all conspiracy. And I loved the Chronicle, but I had it set around like 5 players. Like those players needed to be at the table. And it went great. And then just 7-8 months into the game, life scheduling conflicts started happening, and we were just never able to meet again. And I like I would get 2 players, 3 players that would show up at the table, and I'm like, I can't do it, right? It was like too critical. So the game ended up folding. And ever since then, I learned my lesson on GMing, that it was like, okay, I'm writing storylines that like there's always, or like games that there's always infinite number of people to come in. Like currently I'm running a 5th edition D&D game, like that's militarized Hogwarts. And if a character dies, well, they just play one of the classmates. That I never statted the other people in the class. I'm like, yeah, you're from class 1D or something like that. So this way there's always like an infinite pool of characters. And if somebody doesn't make it, they just got like late to school, or something happened that they couldn't go on the adventure. Because I also found I hate running player characters in combat for them. I know it's pretty common to be like, oh, so-and-so can't make it tonight. Oh, just narrate my NPC, narrate a guy, or roll dice for him or whatnot. It's hard enough sometimes as a GM to keep track of all your bad guys, but then to keep track of like the best action for a PC character. I know a lot of groups solve it by having like their friends take over their character. I found it's better to do what you just did. They're not there. They're standing outside for guard, or they, got a secret opportunity, and that'll come back around later.
Now, I will often like come up with fun things, but that's just because I like to do it when someone doesn't show up. That being said, like you said, I don't want to run their character. One, you have enough to do, and two, like you don't want them to have to deal with like lasting consequences because they weren't and when they weren't even there. But the thing that I try and impress on other people that are GMing and playing the game is don't worry about it. It's okay to just handle it. Now, if you want to come up with something that's fun and cool, then sure, why not? Like, yeah, people will not show up at the most inconvenient times. Like,
oh, of course, it's always in the big.
Two characters wander into the woods, going camping together. Monster comes out of the woods right in their camp. That's where we end the session. Next session, one of them's not there. What do you do? So I have them get hit on the head and drug away. So the rest of that adventure is them trying to rescue their friend, who just got married to a thatch.
The impromptu bugbear weddings. I'm actually facing one this Friday. I know a player isn't going to be there, and it's a big like diplomacy session. And that character happens to be the one with like the blackmail or like the diplomacy, and I'm just like, all right, how do I do this? I still haven't come up with a solution yet, so I'm thinking of it. If you got any suggestions, let me know.
So, and like that stuff is fun to come up with, but again, like I said, is we always just want to impress that it's not necessary if you guys just want to play the game and have fun.
Oh yeah, in fact, sometimes just going through it with the person not there, like even if you just get so like generic about it, like, oh yeah, they ate some bad food and fell asleep.
Yeah,
like sometimes they are funny memories that carry on beyond that. And there have been times where a player wasn't there, we ran the combat, or somebody had to leave early, and we all just forgot to stop taking actions for that character, and nobody noticed throughout like most of the fight until like that one moment when like half the party's dead, two people are making like death saving throws, like, hey, wait, what about Andy? And I'm like, oh, Andy's behind like a column the whole time. She runs out and like starts helping now. But like you can do all that stuff. Just whatever works for the moment is the best.
Right. And had the fight not turned poorly, no one would have ever even remembered.
Yeah, nobody. It isn't until you really start staring at your sheet to be like, okay, have we used all of our spells? Does anybody have any healing potions left? Like, wait a minute, that was on Andy's character. So, yeah.
It just goes to show a lot of the times the things we think that matter, they really don't. It's 7 sessions from now, no one will ever remember.
Oh my God, that's my biggest tip that I had given a lot of GMs was, would you sit on down to like plan your sessions and like your plot lines? For the love of God, don't go nuts. Just write like a sentence, like a focus challenge strike, like 3 little like trees, because there is a chance that the players will just like walk right up to it and be like, hey, what's up? Oh, hey, that's a thing that's in the world. Cool. We're going to ignore that. We're going to go over here to this other thing that is just like some goblin NPC that you had impromptu, completely off the fly with no writing, done. And now that is like a major character and they're on a quest, like working with the goblins. Like that will happen. I spend almost all of my time as a game master writing after the game, almost, and not before. As in like a game session gets done and I will sit down and write, okay, here's all the things that they had done in the game. And here's like the various places they could go based off what they had just done. Rather than sit there at the start of the game and say, here are the things that are going to happen.
And there's always a good chance they won't go to any of those anyway. So,
right.
There's nothing more unpredictable than a player.
The nice thing is though, players don't often know that if let's say you did spend this time crafting this really cool NBC or this scenario, and you really wanted them to see it, and for some reason they didn't do it. The plot went a different direction. The game had deviated. You can always, until it has been in play, they don't know about it. So you can just save that and put that aside for a later use. I mean, hell, I have taken stuff that I have written or planned like 7 years ago and still used it as like, oh, I need an impromptu encounter for this one thing. Hold on. Aha, I got this awesome encounter that I had written. That's our tip, or our secret as GMs that we get to have. Like, players don't know what we have behind the screen. So
yeah, it's funny, like I had kind of come up with something for the game this past weekend, and I figured the players would do a certain order of things, and they did them in a different order, which basically had one of our cities just turn into a wasteland. Done, it's gone. For the campaign, there's been a city there, not anymore. So, oops.
So actually, here's a good question. One thing that is never talked about a lot, and I'm always curious about it, is have you guys ever ran or played in seriously epic level campaigns?
No. Matter of fact, the running joke my buddy Mark has is because the characters we have the highest level characters we've pretty much ever had playing all the way through from first level. And
yeah,
Ted's game.
That's the only way to let me preset. That's the only way that this counts, right? If you start at level 25, who cares?
Like literally level 1. I started a party at like 5th or 6th, and they got up to 18th, and I think that was the highest, and that was a very Monty Hall crazy campaign, and everything advanced really fast. Now the one that Ted's running, he started when 5th edition started. We're 16th level. And I think when we were 14th level, someone was asking a similar question. And then his line was, for us to get the 14th level, we would have had to start at a 12th. So we just have so many campaigns where we've just stopped and started, changed editions, changed systems. That's kind of been our MO for the past 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I'm a bit on the opposite end. Unless my players, for some reason, like scheduling conflicts happen or whatnot. The last D&D game we had went for about 8 years, and we were all level 27, 28, and we had played it up from level 1. That was back in the 3.0, 3.5 kind of rollover. I'm curious to know from somebody that has run or played a lot of 5th edition D&D, how well 5th edition scales up. Because my current plan, and this is just my nuts here, my current plan is to run my game until the players hit level 20. And then we're going to keep gaming for years after that, but I'm just going to freeze them at level 20 and instead have them do things like get boons from gods or favors and other things like that, but no more level advancement. And because I'm thinking, and the players are having some fun with this, the idea that you only have this many class levels to work with is really kind of defining them and what they can, do. Like taking a single level of fighter or monk, might be powerful at low level, but that might really hamper them, or not if they don't care about the final feats. But I want to know from somebody that's done it how 5th edition scales up when you're playing at that level. Because my default is to, rather than try to throw walls of hit points at people and just have like a combat grind fest, is crazy kingdom politics and nation battles and Planescape stuff, things that aren't really dealing with, here's the critter, hit it with sticks.
Yeah, you can't kill the problem. You have to work. You kind of have to work through it. Did you see the Kickstarter that someone put out a Kickstarter for Epic Levels 21st or 30?
I did not. So I will have to go investigate this.
That exists as well. We had those guys on, but I forget the name of the company that did it off the top of my head. We're closing in on 200 of these things, so talk to a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I'm interested in epic level content. I will. I have like set my like I planted my damn storyteller flag into this and been like I'm gonna run epic level 5th edition from level 1, and I don't care if the players come in and out. Like this is the thing. I've designed the game to be able to support it. Like what happens in a year from now if like half my game decides to go to like we're gonna live in Italy now. Like that's cool. I'll get some new players.
We've been talking to our groups, and we're like, all right, we want to get to level 20, and then we're probably gonna do something else.
But so that's always like such a as a player though, uh, you get this time, you get to level 20, right? There's always this like nostalgic end of like wanting to go on like one last ride, one last adventure, one last thing. And I get it from a GM point of view. It becomes hard to write for epic level content. Plus, burnout's a real thing. You run a weekly gaming group all the time, and you do that for arguably 2 to 3 years for the same campaign. The story can sometimes feel dead. But when you do hit level 20, that's when most games end, and you never get to use the stuff that you get when you're at level 20. So, I don't know. What do you think about that? Like letting players play around for longer periods of time with their stuff.
So I
Change the
guess
world.
we've got this like different take because we just record all of our games now.
Right.
So it's like getting to having a finish point is like, okay, now we get to do something else, something different, and expose the audience to a different take on things, whether it's a different game system or using different characters, different things like that. So I guess that like part of it for us is that as well. And I could definitely see like the appeal though, of being like, all right, epic level. Now let's but I guess kind of what we want to do is when they hit 20th level, that's like the last hurrah. And like my idea is they hit level 20 and you do one final session at level 20. Because what's the point in getting to level 20 and just stopping?
Right.
So,
like, guys, we beat the final boss. For level 20 now. You can level up, and that's the end of the campaign.
yeah. So I want to do level 20 and then one more session or arc or whatever that is.
Sure.
Is the idea.
Now
So
they're okay.
So Seventh Age, is that your campaign?
That is the campaign that I run in all the time for my homebrew stuff now.
No matter what system?
I set it at different time periods or places, but I'm usually running in sort of my homebrew Seventh Age world now. So like if I'm running when like the apocalypse is currently happening, I tend to gravitate towards like Shadowrun systems, where there are systems that I wouldn't run like Bubblegum Shoe. I would just run that as what it was, or like systems that are very heavily tied to a storyline, because I play a lot of Legend of the Five Rings, or a Cthulhu Mythos games. Those are going to stay on their own, but like D&D, you can take D&D and put it into anything. So like it was pretty easy for me to take the Seventh Age and be like, all right, 500 years in the future after magic returns, here you go. Here's D&D. And all I do is go to the back of the DMG guide and I find the rules for guns and, artifacts and whatnot. And like, players will in the game, like they come across, they went down into like the Underdark effectively. And it was like a burnt out Warsaw, Poland, and in there they find like, a cloak of protection, which is like a fireman's jacket, and they find a bow that, does really good, but it kind of looks like a rifle and you need a proficiency to use it, So D&D works great for post-apocalyptic settings, especially if you're having like, because I have, instead of, there are like people worship them, they're the gods of the world, but they're really just super powerful people that had mastered all the magic and are demanding worship from their followers. So I really I'm really sold on 5th edition being one of a great post-apocalyptic uh, campaign rule set, because you get this mix of fantasy, and with the advantage disadvantage system, it's so easy to just throw whatever you need to have in there. Monsters are easy to customize and change. Orcs and goblinoids could be like radiated mutants in a wasteland. Like, you can reskin so much in there, and the classes are pretty supportive of everything as well.
So, so when you switch systems, but you stay in the same campaign world, you just move it
Yep.
around depending on what you're using. Have you tried messing
Yep.
with any like generic systems where you're like, oh, I could use this system for all
I
all the
use
different ages?
I use Dread a lot. Have you heard of the game system Dread?
I have. I have not played it, but I've heard of it.
Okay. I some of the generic systems I've used, and Dread is hands down the one that I love the most. It's this like Jenga tower, right? For people who don't know, and like as the game goes on, if your character wants to achieve something, you pull from the Jenga tower. You succeed, right? As the encounter goes on, or as the storyline goes on, it becomes more and more and more tense, and players get really invested. And we had this one, I had written this Dread module, which we just published on Drive Through RPG, called like the Seventh Age Ravenous. And it's this idea that you're, 4 Secret Service agents in the White House when the apocalypse happens. And, the cabinet and the president might have access to demonic magic. And you're not exactly sure what to do about that. And so
Sounds
in
very
this
appropriate.
scenario, right. In this scenario, in most Dread games, everybody dies, right? Like, you don't live through a Dread encounter. You just achieve an effect at the end of the story. So every time the tower dies, a character meets their final end. But as a generic system, I have found that I can go to any convention, I can go to any game store, and I can throw down with a dread tower, no matter if they're a 12-year-old, some kids mixed with a dad, or a 50-year-old gaming vet. It is intuitive and it works, and then all you need is plot line and storyline. So
So in a system like Dread, so like there isn't really a character sheet, right? So there's no.
there is actually, and the character sheet is really funny. It's a series of intrusive questions, like, "Hey, Agent Ward, why did you sell your partner out last year?" And then you, as a player, when you're starting the game, you write down a small story about why you did this thing. You fill out this FAQ form, and some of them are like, "Hey, if you, why do you suck at using computers?" And what that means is, if at any point during the game master asks you to make a pull from the tower, if you have something in your story that is like, "I was like the ace linebacker," I'm not going to make you pull to go tackle that zombie. You just do it. But if it's one of your flaws, you're going to have to pull twice to succeed. And so that's kind of the way they do character sheets, rather than like stat blocks. Now, what I've also done is I've taken Dread and I've put it in my D&D game. And I do this in a lot of tabletop games I do. And I really recommend this. You should give it a shot too. Take a Dread tower, sit it in the middle of the table. Like when you guys are like on the elemental plane of fire, or like you're fighting on like an ice bridge or whatnot. Anytime a character takes an action, including the GM, you make a pull, right? And what the tower represents is the environment, the building tension that the bridge of ice is cracking, that the volcano is going to erupt, or that something bad or is going to change the setting around you. It's a good kicker. If the characters beat the encounter and the tower doesn't fall, okay, that's fine. It's this tense tower. They walk off the bridge and they scoot, to where they need to go. If the tower falls, whether by the GM's hands or the player's hands, rather than rebuilding the tower, saying a character dies, that's not what you do here. The tower falls. the ice bridge breaks. Now you guys are having the combat as you're falling, or like in the river, you know, being washed out, or like the elemental plane of fire started erupting lava on you. It hands down, you can only do this for like the big set piece epic encounters that you have. But if you throw this Dread Tower in, all of a sudden everybody stops chatting at the table. Everybody gets real tense as they start commenting like shit, what's gonna happen? Okay, can we do it? Can we do it? You know, like everybody's actions become very measured. The game gets serious, and it's awesome.
We have talked about the Dread Tower, we just have not implemented it yet. So a while back when we first got it started, Brian Collin had just picked up the Audible version of the book this morning, about 5 chapters in so far. I'm digging it. So at least one person in the chat has heard of your books and picked it up. So awesome. And you said you're already, you know, this book has been released and you're already working on the second one, or did you say it's already written?
It's written. I just finished on Friday the 111,000 words needed for the first draft. So 1 year, my first book came out today, or actually tomorrow, last year. So before my first book, or before my 1 year anniversary, I'm already done. I just gotta like get it off to an editor. And I really like the second book a lot. I'm like, I am excited. I had a lot of fun writing it, so that's always a good thing. But yeah, no, I bolted myself down to the chair and I refused to buy myself video games to get it done. I had resisted playing Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild since that thing had come out. I have like Zelda tattoos. I'm a huge Link fan. I had waited until I was done writing before I went out and bought it. So I got done on Friday. I have the game. I've already started playing it. But like, it got to that point where I was like, I'm focused. So I'm going to write 3 more, I think is going to be the arguable plan. And then I do short stories and side adventures. And they're like 7th Age Ravenous. Like it's a Dread game module. And it's just set in the world because I never talk about what happens in the White House. So there's just fun ways to do little stuff like that.
I think it's great that you had to set a reward system in place to get it done. That's actually literally why I do not play video games. It's because like I just won't do anything else.
Yeah, there's been it started to spread among my writer friends. My friend Joe Asfahani, he's another big hardcore D&D player, whatnot, one of my gaming buddies, fellow writer, and he put his PlayStation in my house so that he would not play like Destiny, so he could finish some like edits and stuff. So I don't know. I guess that's where we're moving to.
Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, I guess.
Right. Because you make like video games, I love them and all, but between running game and work and like family life and like wanting to go like see a movie or eat and the occasional sleeping, something's got to give.
I feel you 100%. You know, when we started Nerdarchy, we all had full-time jobs, families. So it's, you know, everything you want to do that really matters to you is generally a lot of work. So you just got to pick and choose. You know, diving into the chat, Ben, is a question. One of my DMs seems to be really cautious and isn't throwing very difficult encounters. How do I get him to up the heat? Well, the only thing you really do is tell him you want tougher encounters. You guys want to be challenged. Tell him it's okay to kill you.
Yeah, communication is like the number one de facto thing. And then also your GM might be scared of killing you because he doesn't want to have to do a lot of the work to rewrite a campaign when those characters die. D&D has resurrection. Like, it's okay if you guys fail.
Yeah, especially once you hit like 5th level. it
Yeah.
becomes, it gets easier and easier to bring people back. You have to kill, if you're the GM, if you really want them to stay dead, you have to kill the cleric first.
Uh,
But
oh, and even then, like, you don't have to trash your campaign. You can kill an entire party with a full TPK and then just run the game in the underworld.
so yeah, biggest thing, just communicate. If you're a GM, don't be afraid. If you're from the GM side, I would just forewarn your players, like, this is the style game we're playing, and make sure everyone knows and you're on the same page. But other than that, go for it.
Also, the another thing too is, like, for GMs, hard doesn't necessarily mean killing your players. It could mean my favorite is to play with a land of moral grays, where players have to make a choice between two sides that are both equally as shitty. Uh, and that hard choice that they have to make makes the encounter de facto more difficult. Like, you have to save this person or you have to kill this person, but this person is a tyrant or a terrible person who you just hate. And this person that you have to kill to save somebody might be like one of your favorite people. Um, and you got to make a choice. Sometimes that helps with spicing up encounters rather than throwing more dice at it.
Yeah, and anything like you said, like making the players choose, and each thing they do is going to have a consequence to it, good or bad, and it helps get them invested. So, but the biggest thing is just communicate, guys. Duel 18 question for both: what is your favorite character you've played, no matter the system?
My favorite character I played is actually I got talked into playing this character that was outside of my usual wheelhouse of, like, socially, like, angry, fist raising, rabble rousers and whatnot. Because I played a lot of Brew on White Wolf. It was in Deadlands, and it was Sean O'Connessy, and he was a demolitions expert who was a short Texan with a big stogie sticking out of his mouth, and he walks around as like a mad scientist with this cart filled with just heavy weapons, explosives. And he was a miner, and so, like, my whole profession was mining, and I would go out and I would take nitroglycerin and dynamite and blow things up with it, and it was a lot of fun to play this ugly, short, like, Irish, like this pale Irish where, like, you burn in the sun the moment it, like, pops up. But what had happened throughout the game is the character kept losing more and more limbs, not intentionally and not hilariously. He just, like I would be perfectly fine and set demolition charges, and, like, I would walk back to the thing and everything would be just fine, and I would blow stuff up with no problem. But, like, I would get into a fight and, like, my bad guys would, like, chop off my arms and stuff. So throughout the game, I had, like, more and more of, like, these, like, 1860, like, sort of like steampunkish prosthetics, but, like, they all malfunctioned all the time, and so it just made the character, by virtue of being hobbled, a crap ton of fun to play. And he became this ornery bastard, and he was a blast. I loved him.
Man, it's really hard because of having played so many characters over the years, and also I've spent a lot of time as the GM early on. But one of the ones that comes to mind that I would have liked to explore a bit more was when a friend of ours had come and ran Fate for us for the first time, Fate Accelerated, and it
Yep.
was kind of like this time hopping. We've all get sucked, through this portal into another world, and we have to, like, deal with the problems that are going on. And I played this hardcore right-wing conservative survivalist that was like a Vietnam vet with his dog Bo. Total Bible thumper, and it was just a lot of fun. And like, I just remember at the end of the campaign, we had did something like we had totally thrown. I say campaign, end of the session. We had totally thrown Scott through a loop because we avoided every fight he threw at us, either through diplomacy or something else. And at the end, like, we were hanging out with all of these orcs in space, I think. And they're like, no, we don't really want you to stay, but your dog Bo, yeah, he's welcome. And so just like I really enjoyed that character and the end note, and it would have been a lot more fun to play. And like I think he was trying to bring Christianity to the elves, so
Oh, that's gonna go over fantastic.
so there's things like that have been a lot of fun. And like the character I'm playing now, Uthengar, in our D&D game is the longest character I've ever played, so he's got a special place. So it's like trying to pick your favorite kid. I feel child.
Oh man, the longest character I've ever played is uh, this Tremere vampire from White Wolf, because I played a lot of like live action games, like LARPs. I mean, like classic like trench coats, katanas, like sunglasses at night. I mean, the '90s were a very special place, right? And I still LARP, right? I love it. And I had a Tremere vampire that I didn't let die for far too long. I still have his character sheet in my coat. But no, I'm usually the GM like you, so I don't get as much playtime. I have a lot of NPCs.
Yeah, I find I like different characters for different reasons. So that makes it really really hard to pick. Like Jogo was one I recently played for like a 12 session arc, and he was just a half ogre barbarian, urban barbarian, and his dump stat was intelligence. So he had an 8 intelligence, but I probably played it more like a 6. So it's just a lot of fun.
Did you ever get into taking like character classes from game systems and purposely trying to twist them to make them more fun? Like doing the like I'm gonna play a wizard who is like just this like up in your face like bar brawler, or things like that.
I feel like we've talked about that quite a bit. I don't know how much we've done it. We're definitely down for reflavoring and reskinning things, or playing against trope. Like oftentimes you'll see in different threads people like this player is playing their character wrong because they're playing them unoptimized. And it's funny because in a lot of our videos we tackle things from a mechanical standpoint, and people don't really listen. I feel a lot of times, because if you really listen, you would hear us say things like, just because it's not optimized doesn't mean it isn't fun. And just because we're talking about the mechanics of it and we're like, this sucks for a class mechanically, but
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of times we're talking about things we play. So we just acknowledge that it's inferior to some of your other choices you could make.
Sure. And those are like fun gamer discussions to like sit there and talk about like, okay, guys, is there really a big enough difference between warlock and sorcerer to merit, two separate classes, right? Uh, and but at the same time, in a game live, a mechanic is only like, in my opinion, a mechanic only serves to highlight a particular aspect of the narrative. Uh, so like breaking down a door, right? If you have a door and you like it's closed and the player's like, I'm going to break down the door, and you're like, okay, hold on a second, let me go look up the hardness of this door, and the player's going to make their strength check and you're going to calculate damage. Honestly, if breaking down the door is not relevant to the encounter, like it's just a door, like there's nothing special on the other side, why bother? Just ignore it. They break down the door. Great. It takes them like 7 hits. Have a good time. Now, if that door is like the crucial door that's like keeping them safe from like a band of ogres, that's why there's a mechanic for the door hardness. It's only relevant to you when it needs to be relevant. And it also can be fun, though, to do sometimes like Rifts was my favorite game system to do game math in. Like if you actually looked at the book and was like, hey, in this Robotech suit, it says it fits 6 people, but the dimensions are like 36 inches wide in like the cockpit. So how are you fitting 6 people? It's like one person in each arm.
Well, we never said they always make sense. Now, someone had asked the question, and I had I've lost it in the chat, but they had asked which books you found the most influential as a GM.
Which books is as GM? Mm, the Wraith Player's Guide. And the reason why, for me, like game books are like, there's game books and then there's like novels, right? Like
Yeah.
novels, Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, right? Multiple characters in a fantasy setting with multiple different plot tracks with this like quest, but all these characters all have their own little storylines that they're all doing, right? That's like my de facto, hey, that's a great epic plot line. But like for like how to run a game, it was the Wraith books, and because they were my first, and also because in Wraith, you know, it's a game with me, you, and one other person, and we're playing the same character. You're my evil shadow in my head, and we're trying to crawl out of the underworld together. So like, it's all about encounter building. You know, it's all about how to drive a character's motivation.
So that was actually from December 7 M2. I finally found it. But yeah, you know, for me, I think one of the earliest books that really helped me a lot, I want to say it was like the AD&D World Builder Guide. And when they introduced the concept of just starting out small and then working your way out, I was like, it was like mind, it was mind blowing for me at the time. And you know, you can take that principle and apply it to adventure creation, world building,
Sure.
any aspect of the game. And what it's really about is it's about conserving your energy and not working on things you're never going to use. It's, you know, that whole premise is what, you know, the lazy dungeon master is kind of written on, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, just they, you know, and there's an article that just came out today that I wrote, and it's about the beauty of limitations, right? Uh, the like Sax Carr was talking about it on the show, and I had this article where it was like, hey, listen, build your stand. Like if you take your campaign and you say just start here in this town, and you flesh out that town, you can stay in that town. But the fact that you aren't trying to build the world means you can put all your attention there.
Yeah, and I like that, and I like, you know, kind of unveiling it slowly with the players. Now, you know, there can be some flaws to that too at times, and you might need some broader strokes, like when players ask you certain questions during the session. But you know, we just make them up
Yeah,
as we
that
go.
that came to me when a player sat down and said, "Hey, I want to play." Or actually, so I did it to a GM. He had his homebrew world. He got everything all created, and I was like, "I'm going to play Tiefling." And he's like, "Cool, no problem. You're a Tiefling." I'm like, "Great. Who's my dad?" And he had no Cosmos, and he looked at me, was like, uh, the unspoken void. And I'm like, "So wait, I'm like a half Cthulhu thing?" He's like, "Yes." All right, I'm gonna roll with it. That's awesome. But like, I did that. That's a broad stroke apply. Like, I asked a question that he didn't have an answer for. Uh,
Yeah, see, that's when the GM has to go, I don't know. You tell me who your dad was.
yeah, right.
But yeah, so it's definitely things like that could come up. But you know, and that is why we're just big fans of improv. And like you said, you take all your notes after the session. I take all my notes during the session. One day I should probably take some time after the session and actually organize those notes so, so I can understand them. But you know,
Yeah, I tried doing it mid-session at one point. My hat's off to you for the ability to like note take in session. But I talk with my hands way too much, and so there is like I looked at my mid-session notes afterwards because I'll get into a half thought of like, you know, I'll be listening to the player talk to me and I'll be trying to write a note and I'm already thinking of a response while I'm still trying to write this note about what might be happening. And I go back 4 hours later and I look at it and it's like, Cecilia stole water from King. Like, what the fuck did I write?
what did she do with that water? And why did she need that water? It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Yeah, I totally get it. And I have to actually physically write, which is way less effective than if I were to type it someplace. I don't think I could type it and, you know, and DM at the same time. I can jot notes down without too much.
Oh, Yeah, I don't even have at this point. I'm fully digital on the GM because I had bought into D&D Beyond hardcore. So I've been doing like the online dice rollers. Like I have my like little laptop set up where I do everything behind there now. Uh, my players are all still pen and paper um, because we run homebrew and that's just the way that it has to be because I make ad hoc modifications like yeah, you could find this teacher and he'll teach you a feat, add it to your sheet, but for my GM aspect, I do everything like the cloud now, where like Google Drive or whatnot. So this way, no matter where I'm at, I can always just tinker.
Yeah, pull it up. Well, if you've bought all the way in, then you can just create a campaign, invite your players to it, and then they also have all the D&D Beyond stuff.
Well, that's that they're all in them. They all have in their campaign, but the campaign management software it isn't there. It's
No,
it's a
it's not.
notepad, and it I like having their character sheets in there though because I'll be like writing plotline, or I'll like be looking at something and I'm like, hey, what's this guy's ideal? Because I make them fill out like all their background stories and you know their things as well. So this way I can always go back and reference it. Like, oh yeah, you got like ambushed by carnies at some point. Okay, let's let's put a carnival in here.
That's funny. That sounds like something my players would be doing. The carnies doing the ambush instead of being ambushed by them.
Oh man, now they the what is it? Curse of Strahd has the Vistani, right?
Yes.
The Vistani, and so like I just had Vistani in the world, like because they're the ones who leave and they're walking around. And I was using the Vistani for a thing, and it took like 2.5 sessions before I think my players are about ready to kill every single Vistani they ever encounter. Uh, Again, players get bloodthirsty real fast. I've learned.
It happens.
Uh,
It happens. I The reason I said I have two players that play Goblin Goblins based off of
okay.
Juggalos, which
Okay.
I didn't even know what a Juggalo was until they started playing them. And then I had to do my Juggalo research, and I'm like,
Oh no. Welcome to the internet.
Yeah. This is another level of humanity. Sort of.
Yeah, no, they I have a friend I think that would have fit well with your group. He's dedicated to playing characters in that vein. Just these oddball out there like based off this real thing. Like there's this Japanese techno cult where they want to become part of the machine, but then murder everybody who's still part of the flesh. Uh, like, and he's got the name. I can't even begin to pronounce it, but like, he will find these weird, obscure, real life. Like just like you could go learn about them, like these real life like cults and mysteries that are from other cultures, and he'll like play something based off of that. So like every time he comes to the table, he's always got this like, yeah, no, they really do this thing out here in this faraway place, and sometimes that faraway place is like Indiana.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. That's crazy. And, but it adds to the game so much. Like I had planned an encounter with an evil druid, and I was like, I want to use an evil druid. This will be fun. And they just happened to be scouting this mansion in the woods, this like plantation. And while they're waiting for the rest of the party, they get bored. Well, the juggalos are always getting high. So they decide to capture a bunch of small woodland creatures like chipmunks and squirrels and rabbits and get them high and then throw them over the wall. It's that moment in your game when you have an epiphany and you realize you didn't need an evil druid, just a regular druid. There's special moments.
Just regular druid. I like my favorite is letting the players come up with their own worst enemies. It's like you don't need to write the plot. Like I just have this thing happens in the background, and then players will catch on to it and start creating this terrible conspiracy about what's happening. And like one of them was this they came to this port town, and I had like like an Asimar with like her head shaved and like crazy tattoos down one side, and she had like tamed like T-Rexes, and she was like a warlord over this like town. And it was a nice quiet trading town in like a German style area with like big forests and whatnot. It was completely out of place for this Asimar to be like lording over this place in a completely malicious fashion. Um, but she is their main protector. She is the person that like keeps the place safe. And the players have managed to create this entire mythos around that she's part of like some invader community and cults and things like that. And after they came up with all their theories, I was like, okay, well, I could start an invasion from this one continent. Like, spoilers for my players, by the way. Don't watch this episode.
The best stuff is, you know, if you just listen to your players. On that note, we were past the hour mark, so I'm going to wrap things up. And I would say check the descriptions where you can find Rick's stuff. Check it out. Go check out, you know, check out his book over on Amazon. There's a link there. It's an affiliate link, as always. Buy anything from one of our links. We probably get paid somehow. Disclaimer.
And also, if you are looking for a dread adventure to play, a one-shot 4-hour with your friends, we just put it on Drive-Thru RPG, and it's 7th Age Ravenous.
Right. Did not know about that. That's not in the description yet, guys. So you can
I know it's not.
But you guys check it out. You know, follow him over on Geek and Sundry. You can follow him on Twitter. Again, all the links in the description. Thanks everyone for hanging out. Rick, thanks for hanging out with me. It's been a blast. So until next time, guys, stay nerdy.